Welcome to the Radio Academy podcast. It's Laura Rawlings, your new host, taking over from Christian, who I have to say has done a brilliant job. And I'm going to be here for the next 6 months looking after things for Rasheen, who's on maternity. And what an episode to start with. Goodness me, it's all about dance music today, which is music to my ears. And it literally has been music to my ears for at least 25 years. Today, the spotlight is going to be on Dance Britannia. So this is a 6-part series. It's presented by Sister Bliss. It's been aired on KISSTORY, and it's telling the story of legends in British dance music.
What is my most cherished moment? And it's not knocking Madonna off number one or selling millions of records. It's getting to number 40, which is where that record got. And I sat in my dining room, aged, I don't know, how old am I? That was 26 years ago or something like that. And I'm sitting there, and it's Mark Goodyear or somewhere, and he's counting down the top 40, and it goes in at number 40. And I cried. And it was the most emotional moment for this reason only. I proved that it could be done. It could be done. A dyslexic lunatic kid from Buckinghamshire made this record. All of a sudden, it could be done.
These shows actually made me climb a ladder into my parents' loft, which is never somewhere that I'd usually want to go. But I wanted to find my old copies of Mixmag and look at the listings and see all the different clubs that I circled in Leeds and Bristol and Liverpool. Anyway, slight nostalgic trip for me. Andi Durrant is the executive producer of Dance Britannia, and he's also owner and director of This Is Distorted, and they're the people who made the shows. So he describes the project as amazing and also very challenging, and in fact, it nearly didn't go to air. So here's where the idea came from.
Once a year, we kind of check in with lots of friends at different radio stations and networks and see what they're up to for the next 12 months and what kind of programmes they'd like to make and if there's anything we can help them with. And I think it was actually Alex Youngis here who was chatting with Dick Stone, who was looking after the Jack network. And he said we'd really like some stuff for Union Jack, which is a station that only played like British music, and we'd like to do a sort of series on British dance music. So we had a little chat about that in one of our team meetings, and I said, well, funnily enough, Sister Bliss from Faithless, who we've been looking after her show for years and years and years, she'd given me a ring and she said, you know, I'd really like to try something a little bit more in depth. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind, and I said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could get Blissy, who's from this amazing British dance music group who've been so influential, and get her to speak to some other ones. So we came up with the idea and we put it back to Union Jack, and they said, yeah, we absolutely love it. So let's go to the Audio Content Fund. We got it all written up and managed to get the green light to get it funded. And the money landed in our account very quickly. And we're like, okay, great, we've got some money to go. Let's go and make this programme. And about 2 days after that happened, we got an email to say Union Jack was closing down due to financial problems and we had no station for it.
So what did you do then, Andy, in that scenario?
Well, what we did was, fortunately, because we're lucky to have a relationship with lots of different stations. Probably our best relationship is with the guys at KISS. We kind of got on the phone to Rebecca Frank and Jake, who runs KISSTORY down there, and we're like, look, we've got this amazing idea for a series. We've already got Blissy on board. Here are some of the people that we want to get involved. And they fortunately said, yep, great, let's do it. It was originally supposed to go out in March. They said we're not going to be able to do this till the end of the year, so we had like a whole year to do it. But that's how it ended up on KISSTORY. It wasn't originally meant for them, but actually it found probably a more suitable home there in the end, a much more suitable home, I guess. So yeah, it worked out really well.
And actually, I was going to save this till later, but already you've mentioned a few different obstacles that you had to overcome just to get it to air.
There was an awful lot of challenges with this program. You know, we've made quite in-depth documentaries and things before where you're going off and interviewing all kinds of interesting people in all different parts of the world. But specifically with this, we needed very big name artists, and they are notoriously difficult to get. We'd said they had to be British, which kind of narrows it down. They had to be kind of legends, which meant that we had to, you know, these are people who've had lots of big hits. They've sold millions of records. They've probably been on top of the pops and done it all. The problem with those sort of people is that they don't need to do things like this. So we had to pull in quite a few contacts and favours. Obviously, Blissy did the same. She already had relationships with a lot of these people. And some people did say no. We had one very big British dance act said, oh, we don't like the name. It sounds a bit Brexity. Oh, okay.
Wow.
It's a strange reason not to do it, but okay, I'll live with that.
Who was that?
I'm not telling you who that was. There were some people who were like, love to do this, but we're out of the country for the next, 6 weeks on tour or whatever, we can't do it. And there were some people who just like didn't reply to emails, and it was difficult to get it, but in the end we got all the people that we wanted, and they were, I think we can safely say, they are kind of dance music legends. So it was hard to get off the ground, and obviously there's all sorts of technical problems that come with it as well, but yeah, just initially getting those people together, I guess, was the hardest bit, really.
Many things to balance, wanting to do the history and include the key people, but then all of the other things that you said.
I was going to say as well, you made a good point there. It's not just like who do we want and who do we know and who can we get. Once KISSTORY and the guys at KISS had okayed that, it's like, what do they actually want? Because we can't just put anyone on. It's got to be specifically, it has to sort of fit into their remit and their genre. So you've got, who can you get? Will they actually do it? Can they do it in time? Do KISS want them to do it? And you've got you're right, it's a massive balancing act, really.
Yeah, how do you cope with that level of stress then, Andy? Because that is quite stressful.
It is really stressful, but I have like amazing people who work with us here at Distorted who look after things that stress me out a lot. Like, for example, the technical side, which gives me such like heart palpitations. So
well, this is also, it's heartening to know, though, here you are as exec producer of this successful series that has been done and completed, that you can still have these things that also keep you awake at night, but still make it all happen. Then just thinking about Christmas and the sad passing of Maxi Jazz as well. So when it came to putting out the series, when it's meant to go out, and all the kind of big build up to it, this had happened too, and that kind of changed how you felt you could release it to the world.
Yeah, that was like, do you know what this series feels like? It's one of the most interesting and amazing projects that we've done. It's been a real privilege to be involved in it. It also feels like it was completely cursed from day one, and I think everyone gets those projects now and again, that everything that could go wrong does. It was such a sad day. So it was Christmas Eve when the news of that came out. So bearing in mind we'd spent a year making this project, and Blissy was so excited about it, the Faithless team were all, kind of behind it, ready to go with a massive push on Christmas Day as a big double bill episode with Fatboy Slim and Chicane. So everyone's kind of really excited about this. And then Christmas Eve, I sat down with the kids, everyone had snuggled onto the sofa. It was nice, and then my phone just started buzzing and beeping and lighting up with various people messaging me, and I was like, oh no, what's happened? And I saw it, and it was like just that horrible sick feeling in your stomach. Didn't think about the series first, you just think about the Faithless team and the band and then the human loss of it, which is just awful. Because Maxi Jazz, I got to meet him a couple of times. He was just the most lovely human being. He was a poet, a musician, a Buddhist, a gentleman, a really, really genuinely lovely man, hugely talented, and like a voice of a whole generation. So it hit quite hard, that, for a lot of people, me and lots of people that I know. So you get that initial shock of that, and then I immediately thought, right, well, we're going to have to do something now, because in less than 24 hours we've got this big series going out, and this is just going to be weird, it's going to be wrong. I sent a WhatsApp to Sister Bliss and just said, I'm so sorry to hear this, and I'm so sorry to ask right now as well. It feels like a really sort of, I don't know, it feels really bad taste, doesn't it, going, oh, by the way, what about this show? Can you talk about this? It's like, this is so irrelevant to what's going on in their world. But to her credit, she was just like, totally, of course you need to ask about it. Thanks for getting in touch. Yes, let's still do it. I don't think Maxi would want us to put all this to the side after doing all the work on it, and there's some really great stuff in there. So she said, let's do it, and at the same time, we created this emergency WhatsApp group with Bex and Jake at KISSTORY, and the three of us on Christmas Eve are all sat down with the families just trying to organise this thing really, really quickly. Jake went and recorded some messages that went beforehand that just sort of said, Blissy gave us a few lines that she wanted to say, like, this show's dedicated to Maxi Jazz, the original legend, and a few little phrasings that she wanted, and we managed to get those to run before each of the programmes. But what we didn't do then was, obviously, KISS didn't go and all out with their promo talking about it. We didn't talk about it here at Distorted. I didn't on my own personal socials, and obviously the Faithless stuff was all shut down. There was no way they could be shouting about a radio program at that time. So everything got stopped. The whole series went out as it did, but without any kind of promotion. So after all that work, it was a bit deflating to sort of end this thing that was such an amazing project of these great programs, and it didn't get a shout. Now the sort of postscript to all that is that brilliantly Rebecca and the guys at KISS have said, right, let's put this out again. Let's put it out again in February. We can give it all the big promo that it needs.
Yeah.
Everyone's a kind of winner with the actual program side of things because it'll get another airing.
And it is brilliant. We want people to listen to it.
And we do want people to listen, yeah.
You know, when you're young, you think you can change the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And after a while, it's like, can I change my own underwear?
That was the very first track we put out, Salva Mea, was How Can I Change the World If I Can't Change Myself? And Dido sung that lyric, and she got paid with a curry.
I love your showbiz stories.
Well, it's the idea is it's a sort of peer-to-peer chat, this, you know, so we can chat about our misspent youth.
Right about now, the Funk Soul Brother.
Let's talk about the joy of creating this series, shall we? Because I've loved listening to it. Can we start by talking about Sister Bliss fronting it? I'd not heard her do interviews like this before.
Isn't she great? She's just a natural.
Absolutely, she's the perfect choice because she can weave in her own personal and her own showbiz anecdotes. You know, she's a well-respected contemporary, isn't she? I wonder how much of that conversation was planned, you know, what went into the pre-production of it, how much of it is spontaneity and just her being her and her knowledge and insight.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you what about Blissy. She can talk. Not only can she talk, it's hard to stop her talking, which is great. You know, when she's on one, and she really is a great communicator. And I don't think she realises maybe how good she is. You know, this is the first thing she's ever done like that. So in terms of what was scripted, what was done, a lot of it was scripted. Like there was a huge amount of prep went into it because each of these different artists have got these amazing histories and pedigrees. So we had to make sure all that was down on paper. I wrote almost like a big interview first, and then Blissy wrote her own version based on things that they knew that they had in common and things they could talk about. She really kind of freestyles a lot of it. She just let it kind of run and disappear. But that is the beauty of a pre-recorded thing like this, is the fact that we can go on as long as we need and we can chop things down. So, you know,
was there a lot of editing?
Do you know
what? You said she can talk a lot, and I know there are things you had to leave out as well that was perhaps a bit too much of a revelation for the podcast.
Yeah, there was things where, I mean, I don't even know how much I can talk about on
I think you can say anything on here now. It's all done
so yeah,
now.
there was Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim. We had a huge conversation about the Fatboy Slim sex toys that have been made in his honour.
Oh, wow.
So then he went into he's sat in his study and he's like, hold on, I'll go and find them for you. And he's rummaging around in his shelves and he's coming back with these giant dildos.
Oh, goodness me.
So like, okay, good. Well, I don't think any of that can go in. And then a lot of people, there was a lot of talk about drugs. Now, obviously, we're talking about the early rave scene, acid house, the late 80s, early 90s. And a big part of that scene, of course, was ecstasy culture, and especially with things like the Hacienda and the way it came up in the US, in places like Chicago and New York. And there was a lot of talk about drugs, and we had to be very careful in that because I think it is an important part of the story, and it literally changed the world. On the flip side of that, you can't, on a national network, be talking about people smashing in drugs at 7:00 on Christmas Day. Cause
yeah, but it was a real interesting bit of the conversation to hear his insights on that. I'd not heard that before. Were there any other surprising revelations that you might share that might encourage people to go and get listening to it?
There's not a single one bit because there's so much in there, and you've got all these different artists. So you've got Paul Oakenfold, who literally was at day one of. He was one of the 4 people who went on holiday to Ibiza and went to Amnesia and discovered this kind of music and this scene that was happening, brought it back to the UK, opened up these clubs in London like Shoom, and so he is like the origin story of British dance music. So he's got some amazing, to hear that from him and how that happened is incredible. And the same for people like K-Class, another one of the guests on the show, who were kind of going to the Hacienda in Manchester and writing their music specifically to get played in there. And then hearing them, in fact, that is a real highlight for me, hearing those guys who are just the two most loveliest guys.
On Saturday night, we'd had a gig cancelled somewhere and we actually managed to go to the Hacienda. Around 12:30 at night, we were all stood up on the balcony overlooking the dance floor, and you heard like the arpeggio synth coming in at the beginning of it. There's like this sort of ripple of appreciation around the club, and then the next level where the piano kicks in on it, the entire club, it was just, I mean, the only way I could describe it at the time was like somebody pouring petrol on a barbecue. The place just went up.
Wow. Do you know what? I've got chills up my spine with you telling me this. An eruption, really.
That's exactly what I was just feeling then. Because I put myself back in that moment, and I'm literally, it gives you goosebumps. It really does.
And it was nuts.
If you are a fan of dance music and you are, I'm going to say of a certain age, but you don't even have to, if you're like 16, you'll get something out of this. But certainly if you're over 30, I think there'll be some real hairs on the neck stuff.
Yeah, I felt that. And I also got a much deeper appreciation of the music and of the artists after listening to this too. Listen, we mustn't not mention music, because actually that is what this is. This is actually about this. And,
it is.
And all of the amazing tunes. So you hear the conversation, but also you've got a fabulous soundtrack going on in the background. And I just thought, what a joy to be making something like that. But also, how on earth do you pick it? Did you have the interview first and then you put the music to it? How do you keep the balance? Because you want the music in the foreground, because that's also what it's about, but also not to distract from the interview.
What I've learned about making this kind of thing, I mainly learnt last year or the year before, I can't remember what it was, when we did a series for Virgin about how LGBTQ people made dance music. We'd kind of written out all the episodes and how we wanted the story to be told and written all the scripts and everything else, and then we went and did the interviews. And when you do the interviews, you kind of realise that, oh, well, this doesn't fit into our narrative. This has gone in a totally different direction than we needed it to, but it's amazing. So the way that I kind of approached this with our team was like, right, we're not going to really write anything first. Let's get some questions together, but let's go and get all these recorded, and then we'll find out what we need to put in there, and we'll find out how the music goes and, what needs to fit in, and let's not force it. And I think, like you say, the music was almost the easy part, because they've got so many, all of these people have got so many huge, recognisable, well-loved pieces of music, that it was then just a matter of threading them through. It had to be a conversation that just felt like two peers sitting down together and chatting, and then you'd just get a nice little, not even interruptions, but the music just kind of swirls and moves around it in between. And that was a sort of a production decision that we made, and hopefully was the right one, fingers crossed.
Yeah, because then every now and then you'll play a couple of minutes of the track. It made me actually think, oh, is there a separate track list of the music now? So I've listened to this, I'd like to go away and just play that. Just putting it out there.
There is one on my computer, whether it exists anywhere else other than that.
See, I'd quite like that.
I don't know. There is some amazing music in there.
Yeah, definitely. Andy, what advice would you pass on? I know you've sort of shared things throughout this conversation and we can learn from what happened to you, but anything that you think, right, that's what I take away from that and this might help someone else?
Paul Oakenfold, who we talked about before, is truly a dance music legend. He's also an incredibly busy, he's a lovely man, but he's an incredibly busy man. And he does very much answer his own emails and phone. With everyone else, we'd done sound checks, so you can do all these things. You can pre-prepare, you can do sound checks with people, so we sent a lot of people mics as well. So like, look, we're just going to send you a little USB plug-in mic. This is how you do it. Here's all the instructions. And then Alex Healy, who's looking after all the tech side of things, would do a little sound check with them. We couldn't do that with Oakenfold. It came to the time when we'd done it, we had no idea if it was going to work. And it didn't really. He woke up, it was 9 o'clock in the morning in LA. He'd been in bed for about 2 hours and dragged himself out to do this. Didn't have a proper Wi-Fi connection in his apartment or wherever he was. So he ended up like propping his mobile phone on 3 or 4G against like a cereal bowl in his kitchen, and we had to record this whole hour-long kind of conversation.
It was an interesting concept with you two, you know, out of respect to any artist, you want to keep the integrity when you're mixing their stuff. But you two, I had a call with him and I said, look, I'm the drummer Larry Mullen, whose band it is, you're not going to be on the records because I'm going to change the drums, obviously, and I want to realign the guitar, and that was Edge. And then I said to Bono, I want to put female vocals on this track. So I asked their permission. I said, you just let me try it. I mean, you can say no, of course, but let me do this because I know what will work on the dance floor. And they were so gracious in allowing me to do it.
How do I turn that into advice? The advice is you can prepare as much as you want, but if you're dealing with some people, you only get one shot with it. So you've just got to ride with it. You've got to worry about it in post, but also maybe just don't worry about it, you know, like it's just part of the joy of it. And when you listen back to it, you know, the quality maybe isn't as good as some of the others, but I think people are sort of used to that now. The only other thing I would say is if you have a passion for a subject like I do for electronic music, then every part of it is a joy anyway. So even the stressful bits of trying to deal with these kind of people and how does the music fit and everything else, it's all like a pleasure. So if you can choose those subjects that you're passionate about to make documentaries or programs on, then it will always end up being an amazing listen to the end listener because you do it with a passion. If you love it, then it'll like seep through. Even if you're not the presenter, it'll seep through into all of those areas of it. And obviously our team here at Distorted, I'll give a quick shout out to James Medina and Ryan Winders, who put a lot of these programs together. You know, we all have this real big passion and love for dance music and the culture and the scene of the last 30 years. So yeah, it's just like a pleasure to do, really.
Hear to all of that. Dance Britannia is being broadcast again from Sunday, the 12th of February, and it's available as a box set on the KISSTORY website to listen to anytime. And finally, have you signed up to become a member of the Radio Academy? For just £3 a month, you get all sorts of benefits, access to in-person events, our online training resources, and a vast library of content. So search Radio Academy membership for details. Until next week.